The immediate opportunity that I had was the obligation to serve active military duty. My mother and dad loved to see and travel. My dad identified what he wanted to see and do in travel. So, as an example of that, when Boulder Dam in Nevada was completed, Dad was very anxious for me to see that engineering feat, that engineering miracle. When the Golden Gate Bridge was completed, my dad was very anxious for me to see the beauty, the aesthetics, and the engineering miracle that it represented. I mention this as a background. I didn't necessarily like the travel. I got a little motion sick, as a matter of fact, relative to cars. Mother loved to travel, and Dad was extremely curious. So with that growing up relationship with my mother and father, being an only child, I was called into the Air Force. And the military truly opened the world in terms of its multicolors, the art, the history, the geography, the culture, the architecture. My intent in going into the Air Force, having received my commission, was to pursue being a pilot. That had been a goal, a fascination, an intrigue. For as long as I could remember, I had cut out any picture that I could find in magazines of aircraft of all countries, of all types. My room downstairs in my home on Bryan Avenue, there was hardly a spare space on any of the walls that did not have a cutout of aircraft. Fascination and excitement and objective. I really wanted to be a military pilot. It wasn't so much flying, it was military flying. So I entered the Air Force, and my first base to report in was in San Antonio, Texas, Lackland Air Force Base. And in addition to all of the orientations that were required, the reviews that were necessary to bring me up to speed in terms of military active duty, I was very anxious to see if I qualified for pilot training. The examination process was both or had to do with your intelligence. It had to do with your emotions, and it had to do with your physical health, all of which they tried to measure in a couple of days. So the examinations were intense. This was right at the tail end of the Korean War. They needed pilots, but not an abundance or not a lot. So they could be even more defined and strict in their assessment of who went into training. And it was a 2-year training program. I completed that, and my enthusiasm, commitment paid off in all 3 elements. I used a concern for my eyesight as an excuse not to study. I was so worried about eyesight and passing this examination. The understanding that I had of aircraft and the mission statement of various models in all of the countries, Japanese, German, Italian, British, American. I really had an insight in terms of options or in terms of aircraft. So the military sent me to Williams Air Force Base in Arizona to await my assignment for primary training. The impact of that is secondary to how proud I was to represent my country. My father was very patriotic. He would stand ramrod straight when the national anthem was played, when the flag was raised. Currently, in the political world in which we live, there's been a great deal of controversy as to athletes and their not choosing to honor the flag because of some realistic deficiencies. I feel very strongly that our flag is a national emblem. I have no objection to those who see injustice, those who feel unfairness, denigration. I think there is a proper platform. I think the flag is to be honored by virtue of its symbolism of a country that has dedicated itself to freedom, that has asked of its citizens to take advantage of that freedom by making the world better, by improving circumstance, living, education. So I'm not supportive of people using the forum of a flag ceremony to generate their opposition. Other platforms, to me, seems far more courteous. In any case, the military, I was proud of my uniform. I was proud to be a member or to be a part of the United States Air Force. And that was a continuation of a dad who was very, very patriotic, having served in the Army in the First World War. He himself having been a part of ROTC, Reserve Officer Training Programs, at both East High and West High. The decision that was made to turn down my flight orders to Waco, Texas, becomes a very significant moment in time that I'm not going to discuss during this period. It truly was one of those sliding door decisions where in the Robert Frost Two Roads concept, each making all of the difference, I made that decision and did not accept my orders. And as a result, by virtue of relationship and respect and privilege and opportunity, I was able to complete my active duty time in France. So I was given the opportunity to finish my active duty in France. I had the awareness, the maturity, the perspective, the understanding to recognize the privilege, the opportunity that this represented. And from the moment I received orders to report to Châteauroux, France, at the Central Air Material Area, CAMA. There was a northern area, material area in England, and there was a southern air material area in Spain. And then the central base was in France, right in basically the center of France. So preparation to go, traveling across the country to Bangalore, Maine, where the flight took off for Europe. I'm now out of the United States. The planes then needed a fuel stop to get to Europe, and coming into that foreign, geographic, new culture awakened every sensibility that I had in terms of what a lucky guy, what good fortune. And then moved on and was in France, details of which are significant, but not so significant to try to pick up. The important thing is that I arrived at my place of assignment the day before Thanksgiving. Actually, the next day was Thanksgiving. Of course, I knew nobody. There I was at a base that the United States Air Force was constructing. It didn't really exist. They were making a decision by virtue of the Cold War, communism progress. They said, should we build a base and then move our troops in, or should we move our troops in and build the base? They decided upon the latter, so our roads were just, they were pockets of mud. Most of the enlisted men by definition, lived in tents. Because I was an officer, there were concrete structures that were called officers' quarters, in my case, bachelor officer quarters. So I began in November of 1953 to spend a year and a half in France.